and what you're from it. You can start when
Okay.
it's recording.
We are here today to to speak with Mr. Barrie Trower, whose first degree is in physics, specializing in microwaves. Second degree is in research. And he also has a teaching diploma in human physiology.
Yep.
Having taught physics and mathematics at South Dartmoor College. My interview today...
That's advanced physics.
Pardon me?
I taught advanced physics.
Advanced physics, thank you.
And mathematics.
Okay.
And chemistry.
Wow.
And biology.
Oh my goodness. Well, that makes it better. Thank you. My interview today will address your statement that that you're contacted by individuals claiming from all over the world, claiming they or specific areas of their body are being deliberately microwaved. And you've been asked, is it possible? And you said, yes, it is possible, and that's why I'm here today to talk with you, because it's a interesting subject and a lot of people would like your input on the information. I am one of those people, and as is everyone in this room, who is claiming to be hit with microwaves or targeted. How would you describe, what word would you use to a targeted individual that we're sensitive to this? Is it, you say it's deliberately being done and you know that is happening?
There are lots of different questions there, all in one.
Yes.
Some people are targeted for research. Some people are sensitive. Some people are just very slightly sensitive but becoming more sensitive. And other people may be sensitive to particular different frequencies. So there are lots of different things there all at once going on. If you're sensitive, again, there are lots of different ways you can be sensitive. You're going to have to sort of narrow the questions down more scientifically and to be more specific.
Okay. I guess if a person is waking with burns on their body or bruises or having difficulty sleeping because of severe pain to their head, the back of the head, things like that, different frequencies. You stated in another interview you have the largest list of frequencies and their causes.
Right. I have a list of, this is going back now to when I was questioning spies in the Cold War. I have a list of probably 25 to 30 frequencies which can induce maybe up to 50 physiological and neurological illnesses. The problem we have today is that under the direction of the United States government in 1976, most of the Western countries, Australia, Britain, Canada, and the United States, they were all advised to keep everything secret so that the military and the industry could be protected. You could protect their profit margin. And if the people in the military knew that the equipment they were using could give them tumours, then they could start lawsuits. So the advice in 1976 from the American government was not to tell people the truth, keep it secret. And this is why we have this mess today, is because the industry, what I call the silly boys that are coming out of university these days with their electronic degrees, they just solder all these chips together They have absolutely no idea what's going through people. They don't know the pulse frequencies and that they're going to what they can cause. And so what we have now is really a runaway train. And there will be so many lawsuits if the truth were known and accepted. So many lawsuits that the whole industry would be bankrupt. Now, coming to your other question, you asked about burns in the skin and tinnitus, ringing in the ears, and bruises on the skin. What happens is the sensory cells, they leak ordinarily. When I leak, I don't mean leak like a leaking tap. They leak or pass out little chemicals. Now, when these chemicals are passed out, they trigger neural activity through the body and your senses work. One of the things that microwave irradiation will do, it will release extra calcium in the body. When you release the extra calcium in the body, it can trigger the cells that leak. It can trigger those to leak much more. So what you have then are a series of false sensations. Now, if you have leakage on the skin, then what happens is the skin will become itchy, it will start reacting to everything. If you have extra leaking going to the cochlea in the ear, then it will imitate some form of sound. So you will hear a screeching or a buzzing or a high-pitched whine, and you will really be hearing it. But it's a false sensation. So you can get these. The part of the ear which is getting the signals, it's making that part of the ear vibrate. It goes to the brain to say, this is what I'm hearing, and the brain interprets the sound as a tinnitus, a high whine. So you have leaking. The other thing you have with the skin is these waves, they are electric and magnetic, made up of an electric and a magnetic component. The magnetic component tends to go inside the body. The electric component tends to go around the surface of the skin. And that as well will cause itching and scabs and burning sensation. So there are lots of different things here in that question which you asked.
I'm sorry. People, you're saying that, go ahead, Lars.
If you get so that, if you want to just start over and start the question over, so I'll cut that part out.
Well, okay. Swollen limbs, we have the sudden chilling of the body, uncontrollable shivering, walking with pain in major joints, waking with pain. Can microwaves send chills? Does it send chills, or does the body receive that frequency and do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. The endocrine system, which are the pituitary glands, the pineal glands, the adrenal glands, thyroid, parathyroid, they will control the body's temperature, and they also control how you feel. Now, what happens is the endocrine glands are particularly sensitive to microwave irradiation, particularly sensitive. And if the microwaves are affecting any of the endocrine glands, for instance, if they affect the adrenal gland on the kidneys, and that is known to happen, then what you have is you will have cortisol being released into the body. That will cause heart palpitations, a feeling of panic even, and within 2 hours your immune system will start to crash. And when your immune system crashes, then you can have your joint pains and all the other things. So that's from the adrenal. If you have the extra calcium going around the body, which most people have in microwaves, and it reacts with the cytosol in the brain, what happens then is you get a whole bunch of spurious signals going through the brain that the brain can't handle. It may be telling you you're cold, it may be telling you you're hot, it may be causing pain somewhere in the body. It depends where and how your physiology is made up. But yes, you can get all of those. You can get all of those from microwaves.
Those are some of the symptoms. Thousands of people have the same stories, the same symptoms. We've come together, we've talked, and
well, this was known. If we go back to between sort of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, if we look at that era, even the 90s, and this will take some believing. But I have the documents, and you're welcome to photograph, if you wish, the document. According to the documents, the English, Australian, United States, with the United States I mean the CIA, the Department DIA, Department Defense Intelligence Agency, with their associated universities, and the Canadian Secret Service, they experimented on around 500,000 people over 40 years.
oh my gosh.
Now, the 500,000 people consisted of the poor, psychiatric patients, pregnant women, children over the age of 4, Muslims, Catholics, service personnel. The service personnel were picked because they were all very young and fit. Make an ideal epidemiological study. Service personnel, so that sort of group, as I say, religious groups, psychiatric patients, the poor, pregnant women, children, 500,000 were experimented on. The summary of the experiment, and I have 2 statements. Sorry, last, is it? You wouldn't pass me the piece of paper on the desk just to your right, in front. No, the one to your right, to the right of that. To the right. You're going left. That's it. Sorry. The one with in pencil with all the writing going down. That's it. That one. Could you wouldn't mind bringing that, please, would you? Thank you. It's worth reading their exact statements. Could you just pass me my glasses, please, Lars?
Are they here?
Thank you. This takes some. Thank you. Now, these are 2 statements by. I'm not deliberately picking on Americans. The British were involved in this as well. This is from in 1986, after these 500,000 people were experimented on. This is from the Naval Surface Weapons Center, United States. And he said, we can change behaviour of cells, tissues, whole organisms, in other words, any part of the body. We can have a 6 times higher fetal mortality rate, cause birth defects, and induce malignant tumours in human cells. From 2001 to 2007, there was a secret course held. Number 11 on this course, the opening statement was, students will be familiar with current knowledge. That is, cancer, memory, brain dysfunction, damage to the eye, skin, and birth defects from radio frequency microwave radiation.
Oh my gosh.
So it gives you an idea.
May I ask, what year was this experiment taking place?
The experiments were 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s.
Okay.
But they're still going on today.
Sure.
These are the ones that we have the documents for.
Okay.
They were under a certain project name?
Oh yes, absolutely. In fact, I have all sort of 15 project names. The US government were taken to court with one experiment. Generally, the microwave experiments, they had the letters MK before the code word. So the one that was taken to court was MK Ultra. Now, MK Ultra, I think it had a budget of $160 million or something. And the one project, there were 262 separate human experiments, like on the poor, the children. It wasn't just microwaves. They used all other frequencies. They used microwaves with hypnosis, microwaves with drugs. They used combinations of things. And their boast was they could, but I know they could induce any psychiatric illness that would fool a psychiatrist. So they could instill psychosis, schizophrenia, paranoia, and they could also bring on blindness, heart attacks, liver dysfunction, heart dysfunction, anything in the human body just by targeting that organ, and they still can.
Is there a project name for what's happening currently, or is it under an old project?
There will be, but I don't know what it is because that's still under the Official Secrets Act. I can only get hold of stuff I can get hold of from people who send it to me.
Okay.
But they are still going in. I mean, today, even now, Tetra is an experiment. With Tetra, and I have the original government documents with Tetra, they say at the beginning, when Tetra was it was forced. Tetra was forced out, and according to one document that I've referenced in one of my reports, it was between the American and the English governments that forced Tetra out. And the reason, according to the document, they will deny this, but I can believe it, is that all of the gubbins inside Tetra is made by Motorola, which is an American firm. And by law, anybody in America that makes cell phones must give the cipher keys to the government. So the government has the ability to tune in and listen to every single conversation that's going on. Now, when you've got Bush and Blair forcing out Tetra, and again this is documented and I've referenced it, the aim is to sell Tetra to as many European countries as possible, as cheaply as possible, so that they all buy it. Now, once every European country has got Tetra, what it means is the American government can listen in to every country that has got Tetra.
Oh my gosh.
Is that a
Without
particular
making
cell phone call?
Well, it's not just, you see, so what we have is Tetra is now going worldwide. It's in Africa, India, it's going all over the world. So, but it isn't just people, police officers and ambulance and fire brigade. It's your MI5s, your MI6s, your secret services, your customs, your air sea rescue. So every secret department in every government, and Tetra I think is now 200 countries. So every secret department in 200 or so countries can now be listened to by the American Secret Services.
Oh my gosh.
Now you can see why the Americans want this, and you can see why the British want it. But I mean, I was invited to Amsterdam a few years ago with the police chief, who he was sacked for talking to me. A lot of people are sacked for talking to me, I can tell you now. A police chief called me over there and he said, we were having dinner in the hotel, and he said, the problem I have, Barrie, he said, is I know the Americans can listen to what we're doing. He said, now, we catch drug runners. And he said, I can spend 2 or 3 years hunting down a drug cartel. Now, if the Americans can listen in to all of our operations to catch this drug cartel, you only need one American official who is bribable. He said, now, use your imagination. Is it possible that there is an American official who is bribable? He said, and he can listen to this, pick the information up, pass it to the drug cartel, and I've lost 2 to 3 years of a really confidential, highly secretive operation. He said, and that's what worries me. He said, it is the fact that everything we say is being picked up, decoded and stored by the Americans, he says.
Is Tetra ostensibly an emergency system?
It's an emergency system for the emergency services
Okay.
and the military and the secret services. It's used by everybody.
So,
But that is an experiment. And they said, at the beginning, they said it has a pulse frequency which is known to cause calcium efflux. In other words, the pulse frequency will affect the way your brain works, and it will affect every organ in the body and can cause tumours. And they say in the initial document, which I have, they say this is experimental until 2018, and we cannot rule out cancer and neurological damage.
to the police and fire.
No, the police weren't told, nor were the fire brigade. Nobody was told. It was kept secret from them.
So they're part of
The experiment. Every police officer, every fire brigade, every ambulance worker, they are all part of the experiment, but they were never told that they were a part of an experiment, which is actually illegal under international law.
Mhm.
So could this Tetra system in the hands of police and fire and ambulance? Could it be used or abused? Could it be could that those frequencies be abused toward other people? Because we find ourselves not being helped by police and firefighters, and law enforcement will not listen to us. They label us mentally ill right away and say this is not happening to you, but it's happening to them also.
Yeah, I have had, sitting where you are, within the last few months, 5 lady police officers, all with throat or breast cancer, and they have all said that when they've complained that it's where they've been carrying their Tetra sets,
Yes.
they have been victimised and bullied. I have an ambulance lady ring me up Saturday to say that she carried her Tetra on here, on her hip, and she now has a tumour on her hip that needs a biopsy. And she's coming to see me, I think, Thursday or Friday, from up north. But there are a lot of tumours now appearing, and we think a lot of neurological damage as well. Because I've always said, and in my report, you haven't got a copy of my higher report, have you?
I might have it with me. I'll have a look.
If you have, I can let you have a copy. But I've always said that if you have a police station where Tetra is installed, you will have.
I'll lift it back at the hotel.
Okay, it's the higher confidential report, not the confidential report, the higher confidential report.
I don't know if I read that.
All right. No. No, as in very highly confidential.
Okay.
I can let you have a coffee to take away.
Okay, thank you.
I've always said that where you have Tetra, and I've been right round the world talking about this. Any police station, the police will become more bad-tempered, more aggressive, and more violent, always. There will be more car accidents involving police drivers. There will be more cancers involving the police, and the sickness rate will increase. And I've said to anyone around the world, find me a police station where that is not happening, where it's been installed for 6 months or more.
6 months.
Do you think maybe a long-term goal or covert goal of this is then the police won't be very effective and to kind of to establish a military state, more and more going towards that?
No, I think they didn't anticipate how quickly the cancers and the bad behaviour would come in. I think what happened was the Americans thought, let's get this around Europe, because America has really 2 problems, the United States. One is the Russia and China effect, because Russia and China are a threat to the United States. The only other threat to the United States is if Europe comes together. So with Tetra right throughout Europe, I mean, really, when you've experimented on 500,000 people and caused deaths, and had them committed to asylums for the rest of their lives just to experiment, and you've caused pregnant women to have miscarriages, birth defects, genetically deformed children. Once you've done all that, having a few police officers and ambulance workers and people die is really immaterial, because there are plenty more to join. There are plenty of jobs. So, and I think it's, from the American government's point of view, it's, we'll get the British to force this out which is what Blair and Bush did. Okay, so some people are going to die throughout Europe, but at least we can listen to all of the conversations and, you know.
So you think that's the only purpose they have brought this program in, or this experimentation?
Oh yeah,
The
Tetra.
sole purpose.
Yeah, because there are better systems and there are safer systems.
Okay.
And they were warned by people like me. I was commissioned by the Police Federation to write the safety report, and I condemned it outright.
Wow.
And they called a meeting to the police with the Police Federation, with all of the officers, and I was there at the meeting, and they said, "You use it, or you get another job."
Right.
Simple as that. They said, "Use it, or get another job," and they will not let anybody complain. They follow a system. The police, the governments, the secret services, anybody who has authority in these countries, they all follow the same advice, and it's called active denial.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've heard much about that.
It's called active denial. The moment you say anything, bang, it's not true, doesn't happen, active denial. No, he's okay, I'll let him at the front in a minute. It's called active denial, and
I was going to say, I hope there are very, very few people in the Pentagon who really are this evil, and maybe you don't want to comment about that very much. That's just...
it's we're not talking many.
Okay.
I had a meeting, now I don't know what the equivalent is in Denmark or the United States. I had a meeting with the schools minister here, the minister for schools. He is the top person in the country, responsible only to the Prime Minister. And he runs all of the schools. And I had a meeting with him for 25 minutes. And I said, you must not introduce Wi-Fi into schools, because it is going to cause genetic damage, not to the children in school, but to their children and their children. I shall need to explain this, but we're looking at the school children today. We're looking at the eggs being damaged in the girls. They will have a baby when they grow up, which may or may not have genetic damage, but the real threat is that child, the grandchild. That is where the most of the damage is going to come out. And we've got this. I did a cartoon for the minister, which I can give you a copy if you haven't seen it. I did a cartoon because, to be quite honest, the level of their science is, less than an 11-year-old. So I did it as a cartoon, and I said, there you are, that is what's going to happen. You must not introduce Wi-Fi into schools. And he said, I am powerless to stop it. The minister. Although he's in charge of everything to do with all the schools, he said the Health Protection Agency in this country, which is like Health Canada or whoever does the health in the States, he said the Health Protection Agency, which is only a handful of people, they control all of the science in all of the country. And if they say, we want it in, it goes in. And that's it. He said, I cannot go against the Health Protection Agency.
What is the goal? Is the goal to just slowly, reduce the population or dumb down the population? Or
there are lots of goals. If you want to come back on that pregnancy thing and know how it affects women, you'll have to ask me later. Well, the first goal, Wi-Fi, I read Wi-Fi in Europe is worth about 260 billion euros a year. Now, when you come to the rest of the world, you know, you count hundreds of billions of dollars, and that is worth maybe 20% of the population becoming very seriously ill or having miscarriages, child defects, birth defects. 40% of the population probably being sensitive and ill, but you still have 60% of the population well, and you make all this money. That's one reason. The other reason is you can listen to every single person's conversation all of the time, even if your phone is off.
Even if you take out the battery and take out the SIM card?
No, they can't then.
Okay.
Although in some they can. If they've actually handled it, they can, because they can put in a capacitor. But even if your phone is off, they know exactly where you are, exactly what you say, whom you're meeting with, everything. So, and if you turn the clock back, if you go back 15 years, if somebody from your government came to you and said, carry this, I want to know exactly where you are day and night, because I'm going to have you followed. I want to know every single thing you say, whether you like it or not. I want to know who you're talking to, what you're saying to them. People wouldn't have carried them. But because you can push a few buttons and talk to somebody and it makes you lazy, but they now know exactly where you are, what you're doing, who you're talking to. And it isn't one country, it can be up to about 45 countries internationally doing this, not just your own. And
Eavesdropping.
The one of the reasons for it is blackmail.
Right. Makes sense.
It's blackmail.
Sure.
Because you've got all of these teenagers now talking to their boyfriends and girlfriends and you know, mum's out, come over and we'll have a joint and a party and some sex and you know. But up to 45 countries are storing this. Now, when you've grown up and you're a congressman or a congresswoman, or if you have something that you want secret, like you're a paedophile or a thief, you know, they can come straight back to you at any time and say, listen to this. But so you've also got blackmail there, which is a very, very strong incentive for countries. And they monitor every single call in the world. Every single call. And it goes even further, because with the United States, now I'm not picking on the United States, but they have a supercomputer now that not only gets every single message in the world, but also tests it for voice recognition. So if you use somebody else's phone, they will know you've got their phone and relate it back to your phone.
I suppose that's just a small purpose of the whole voice recognition system.
Yeah, but on top of this, I mean, it's phenomenal what this industry now has the power to do. You have biological and microwave warfare. They can make you ill. They can target you. Mm-hmm. Any transmitter, it's called CELDAR. CELDAR. There are different types of CELDAR now. If they wanted to target you as an experiment, or if they didn't like you, what CELDAR will do from any of the microwave towers, any of the hundreds and thousands of them, and you don't even need to be carrying your phone. It can lock onto you, and once it's locked onto you, the computer takes away all of the things that are not moving, like buildings and trees and lampposts. So now the computer is following. It's like radar, only from microwaves. So it's now following you, and if you walk up the road, the transmitters will follow you.
Do they follow your brain pattern or
your whole body pattern?
Okay. Walking,
follow your whole body. Yep, yep. And of course it goes through walls. Microwaves go through walls. You see.
No.
So you can be followed everywhere. They know where you go to the toilet, how often, where you sleep, where you go through your house if you're going to somebody else's house. And once it's locked onto you, it can just follow you everywhere.
So, and a microchip is no longer needed to...
No, you can use microchips, but now you can follow people, and if you can follow them, you can target them. And if you target them, you can send pulses to their brain, pulses to their heart. So if they want, they can have you followed, and they can make you go mad, they can give you a heart attack, they can make you go blind.
Who is they? I mean, do you know?
Yes, you have...
We always say they're doing this to me again. Who? I mean... put a name to
they are government scientists working. Sometimes they are university departments. Governments have an enormous research budget. The English, United States governments have enormous research resources, and they will employ university departments.
Well, would they maybe plant one person, say, on a university project, one or two? But the rest of the people maybe are innocent? Or know the full
it may be the university department doesn't know that it's actually building something which can be used against the people. For instance, one of the machines they made was in shops, and they still use them. Now, in shops, you can be targeted in shops, and they can beam microwaves and other waves into your brain in a shop. And they also use them in fast food centres. Now, universities develop these under the grant of a government for lots of money. And the university were told it's to deter shoplifters.
That's what, yes.
So, but I mean, instead of saying, don't steal this, you can say, if you want to, buy this.
It's an influence mechanism.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, once you've got it, so the university may be innocent in some cases. In other cases, it's certainly not. But the main culprits are psychiatrists, psychologists, doctors, specific scientists who have absolutely no morals or scruples. In this country, I know at least one who is absolutely desperate for a knighthood and will say anything he is told to say because he wants his knighthood. And the other thing is, what's interesting is these doctors and psychiatrists and scientists, they are able to work above and outside the law. And this isn't just the law in this country, this is international law. They cannot be taken to court. People have tried. In Canada, they tried to take them to court, and they said Official Secrets Act.
Yes.
National security.
National security, we cannot be questioned. And the people who, they won their case, but not a single scientist was mentioned or charged. In this country, there was a case where it usually takes 50 years to take scientists to court. In this country, there was an experiment carried out on service personnel where they said we want to test different flu vaccines. And in fact, they were nothing to do with flu. They were radioactive and biological experimental things. And a lot of people died and got all sorts of bad things. the government were taken to court, and again, not a single scientist appeared or was named, or again, Official Secrets Act, a little bit of compensation for the survivors. So what we have is we have scientists who work above and outside the law, and they are protected.
So is there nothing that people can do, even though there are thousands of victims suffering from these kind of experiments?
Well, you can take them to court, but it takes 50 years for a start, because the government will say, prove it.
Right.
So they will lean back in their armchairs and say, prove it. And everything you throw at them, they won't reply to. Now, court in this country costs about £100,000 a day. Now, you don't get legal aid for this. There are no charities. So if you want to take them to court, you're looking at £100,000 a day. And I have been involved, I mostly represent the poor in court. Excuse me, it's my stomach rumbling. I mostly represent the poor. But I've represented, I think, 2 billionaires and a couple of millionaires. Now, one of the billionaires, he wanted to take the industry to court. I was the scientist involved. He had his legal team, and he said, I want this industry to go to court. And they said, good, take us to court. And then we looked at what it would involve. They said, we will call all of our experts. They will talk for about 3 years.
Yeah.
It just gets dragged out.
Our experts will need 3 years in court. Now you're looking at £100,000 a day for 3 years before you even start.
Right. So that's impossible for most people.
Countries cannot afford to take this industry to court.
Right.
Countries cannot afford. This industry is now so powerful, it tells governments what they will and will not do.
Yeah, I figured.
And again, because it's too late, and I was involved in a spy case with one major European country where the Prime Minister and the ministers, what I said, they were targeted and bugged. Now, if you want somebody who's corrupt, I mean, you needn't go any further than our government. I mean, they really are corrupt. And we're talking little boys, little girls, you name it. I think in the last election, 60% of our government were found to be thieves or corrupt. 60%. It's just phenomenal. Now, when you've got all of this information on these people, I mean, the industry is now so powerful.
I suppose that's where this system comes in that you described before as well, Tetra.
Yeah.
Well, when then they can use the black belt to pressure government officials as well.
I'll just mention one more thing, and then I'll stop and just check my wife. She's in bed all the time now. I'll see if she wants a sandwich, and I'll get you some chocolate biscuits. I have probably, in my world travels, I have probably sat down, and I'm not boasting here, I have no reason to boast, goodness me, I don't want to be famous. I've sat down with 45 to 50 royal people, kings, queens, princesses, leaders of governments, leaders of countries, advisors of countries, all that sort of people. And this all came, I found that when I was talking to these people, they all started telling me the same story. And I found this fascinating. and like a big jigsaw puzzle, and it was one king, and he put the whole piece together. And he wanted a private conversation away from the royal family and all of his advisors. And we were sitting in his garden, just on a garden table. And he leaned forward and he said, "I'll tell you what's happening, Barrie," he said. He said, "Since this industry came into my country," he said, "I am now losing the viability of my country." And I said, "Well, how?" And he said, "The industry they come in with lies. They say, well, these are radio waves, they're perfectly harmless, blah, blah, blah. You'll make lots of money, millions and millions, zonk, 100,000 transmitters." He said, and this was one of the kings in Africa, and he said, "The first thing I noticed," he said, "is that we lost our ants." He said, "Now, that may not seem important, but the ants crawl all over our plants. They don't eat the plants, they lick the juice. But they keep off the insects that do eat the plants. And these are our fruit-bearing trees." He said, "Now we cannot grow fruit." He said, "We've lost our bees and our pollinating insects. So now we cannot grow our crops. People are becoming ill and we cannot afford the medicines." He estimated it was about a 40% increase in the health bill. "Now I'm in trouble," he said, "because I can't feed my people, I don't have the medicines, and this industry is running right across my country." He said, and then the next thing that happens, he said, the countries involved, namely the United States and the Indonesian countries, the two big, apart from, I know, is it Denmark or Norway has a big mobile, but they weren't involved anyway. The Indonesian countries and the American countries, he said, as soon as they've caused all this chaos, they then come in and say, look, we can bring in fruit, we can bring in medicines, and rather than money, we'll just take a little bit of land, we'll put a military base here, we'll have mining rights for that. And he said, I'm losing my land to military bases and mining. There is mass immigration from these countries to mine. He said, and I can foresee in the future where I will lose the viability of my country. And he said, if I didn't know better, I would think it was a plan to take over my country. And he said, now if you want somebody's country, there's no need to send a fleet of bombers. You just put up masts, transmitters, and it will just happen. He said, and now I've got the military bases and mines and people coming in their thousands to operate these. He said, but I get nothing from them apart from the fact it's all going out. And this was, it was born up, there was a farmer asked to see me, and he said, I was cycling down the road to my farm, I've worked there for 40 years. He said, and there was this man with a gun in the middle of the road, a gun. And the man said to me, where are you going? And he said, I'm going to my farm. I work there. And he said, not anymore. That is our land. And if you pass me, I will shoot you. And I have the legal right to shoot you. This is now a military base. And the chap said, no. He said, it's my farm. I'm going to work. And he said, well, if you pass me, I will shoot you. Go back. And he was sent back, and that was it.
So which country was this?
The soldier, I hate is American. But this was Africa.
This was Africa.
I did a few countries whilst I was in Africa, representing the townships. But now, it may have been by accident, but now sort of Japan and the Indonesian countries, and if you think of what Japan wants, minerals, land, oil, it wants a lot of things, Japan. And if you think what America wants, military bases all over the world for missiles and what have you, you're getting it now. But this was the king telling me...
Might be worth it.
Come on, Scoop.
So, Debbie, if you want to introduce.
Hi, I'm Deborah Paulson here speaking with Barrie Trower, and we also have Stephen Bell and Chris Kupinski asking and speaking with Mr. Trower, asking questions today. I would like to get back to some of the energy that people are feeling. I called you last week with a question that you said would take rather long to answer, and that was...
tinnitus. I remember.
When we...
buzzing in the ears.
Yes. Waking up in the morning, it's almost as soon as you start to come out of sleep, that high-pitched buzz almost goes all the way down, and all the noises in your room or in the bedroom, a fan running, the noises outside, they start to come back into hearing. What causes that so that it's all blocked out?
Yeah, you did ask me on the telephone, and I did say it's a fairly lengthy answer, but there are several different answers to this. The first I've explained is that the sensory cells, as I said, can leak, because they leak naturally, and if you have excess calcium in the body, microwaves can make the calcium leave the surface of cells and flow around. You can also produce extra calcium if the parathyroid gland is stimulated. So with the excess calcium, you can then get this hearing sensation. That is one. Another is it could be coming from your bed springs. If you have metal bed springs, they act as aerials. And if the microwaves are going through your bed, as they will do, you may have a form of resonance or sound coming from the bed springs. That is another. The most likely answer is if you have water or gas pipes in your house, the microwaves going through the house can vibrate the gas, especially if it's stationary, like overnight. The microwaves can vibrate the gas, and it's like blowing over the top of a milk bottle when it's empty, and you get this whoo. The microwaves could be causing resonance in the gas pipes or the water pipes or any other hollow container. So it could be sensory, it could be the bed springs, it could be the gas pipes, it could be the water pipes.
So when people say they hear things in the walls, or that's probably the pipes from the microwave frequencies hitting the pipes?
It could be, yeah. It could well be. It could also be that if you are being targeted, it's called synthetic telepathy. Not only can they make sounds in your ears, they can actually put spoken word into your ears, and you can hear proper voices. Now, that was a long time ago. These days, they can put a pulse signal into your brain, they can produce chemicals. One of the chemicals they like to produce is, and I can't think of the name of it at the moment, but it's when you fall in love as a teenager for the first time,
Theobromine?
and you have this overwhelming trust for the person you're in love with.
Sure.
They produce that chemical, and they can produce that chemical at the same time you're getting this sound. Now, so you trust the voice.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Wow.
Now the voice, depending on what they know about you, I mean, and if they've listened to your telephone calls for years, they will know who you trust and what you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for instance, if you're highly religious, it could be an angel talking to you. It could be God. It could be a spiritual being giving you advice and helping you. And that could come at the same time you have this chemical. So,
That's so interesting.
so you will learn to trust this voice. You will learn to trust this voice, and we're talking months and years and years and years, the voice will follow you and will help you. And then what they can do is they can then have the voice start telling you what to do for your own benefit.
To be subliminal?
Oh, subliminal, yeah. Even commit a crime, kill somebody, blow somebody up. Once you trust this voice and you've got this addiction to the voice, so these can happen, and they have happened, and people have been committed, into asylums for this sort of thing.
What if you're conscious of that it's happening, and you know it's being done to you, not just something, not subconsciously? What if you're aware of it? Can it control you as easily as if you're not aware of it?
I don't know anybody who is immune from brainwashing. I don't know anybody. I think if they want to, they can target anybody. And the reason I know this, I mean, I worked in a psychiatric centre where I believed I was doing good with a psychiatrist, and you can target anybody if you have ever. It's a simple test for yourself. If you have ever lost control of yourself, if you have ever cried, if you have ever lost your temper, if you've ever shouted in anger at somebody, if you have woken up 4 o'clock every morning with a baby crying and you thought, oh God, I hate this child, if you've lost control, even minimally, then you can be brainwashed. If you've lost control, and I've never known anybody who has never lost control somewhere.
Somewhere along the lines. But does it not have a role, how aware that you are aware that people are actually trying to manipulate you to do certain things that your morals
Well,
will turn against?
Yes, lots of people are aware, and they go to their doctor, and we now get back to this active denial. I've known 3 doctors, very, very senior consultants, ask me particular questions, and I've sent them the proof, and the doctors have said, we'll follow this through. And I can tell you now that in all 3 cases in this country, the 3 doctors were told, drop it or get out of your job. Within half a day, they had to drop it or get out of a job, leave the job.
Right. Okay. But my question was to you, can you help yourself by being aware and being conscious about that some people are trying to do you bad, or can they influence you so much that you're not in your own mind at the same time?
You can help yourself. I mean, there are defence mechanisms.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I put them down in a paper. This one I've sent off for to be published. Are you being targeted?
Right.
You have a copy.
Yes, I do.
Can I call you Stephen?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, Debbie may. Is it with you?
Yes.
Not now, but if it's maybe in the hotel.
Sure.
If Stephen could have a. Have you read it yet?
I don't think I've had
Okay.
the chance.
No, I've only just written it. It's not even published yet.
Oh right, okay.
And I sent you a copy, an advance copy. I've sent it away for publication, but the magazine isn't out yet. So whether it's in or not, I don't know. There is something you can do, and it's in that article. If you know you're being targeted, and you don't want to be targeted, if you're being followed by Seldar, you can make it lose you by going into a crowd.
Okay.
It can follow you into a crowd, and it can follow you, but if you sort of mix with a few people and they've all got the same sort of body images, then it won't know which one. So what will happen then is it will try to lock onto your phone.
Right.
If you're not carrying a phone, then it's lost you.
Okay.
But if you're carrying a phone, they will always know where you are.
Sure.
In and out of a crowd. But you can. The other thing you can do is, and it's in the paper that I sent to Debbie. You can, if you realise you're being targeted and followed, go into a crowd. Just mingle with a crowd in a shop, and leave by another door. You throw them off. If you have to carry any form of transmitting device, like a phone or an iPad or an iPod or whatever they call these things, carry them in like a child's pencil case that they take to school, a metal tin.
Oh, the lead one. I know which one.
A metal tin.
Yeah.
They have their protractors and things in geometry sets. A little metal box. Carry your phone in that, because the transmissions won't get out or in. They can't track it.
Okay.
You can wear protective clothing. There are now specialist firms that make ordinary clothes that stop all microwave transmissions going through.
All frequencies.
Yeah. You can buy ordinary woven clothes now. I know there's a firm in Scotland that do it.
All microwave frequencies, but not ELF, like extremely low frequency.
Oh, they'll stop those as well.
Really?
Yeah, they can't stop the higher frequencies, like from gamma rays or X-rays. But you can now buy clothing, ordinary clothing. There is a firm in Scotland. I can't think what it's called.
Okay.
I've never tested any of these devices, so I can't recommend them. But I know there are firms that make ordinary clothes.
That one's in your article, or that Deb has?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, you'd have to search. You'd have to look in electromagnetic clothing.
Okay.
Scott, if you were to type into a search, electromagnetic clothing, Scotland protection, it would come up.
Why does it? Is it the springs of the bed? Why does it feel like the frequencies are coming up from below?
Anything metal doesn't have to be springs from beds. If you have one of the reasons for the high rate of breast cancer is the metal in the lady's bra. If you think about it, you never put a spoon in a microwave oven because it absorbs the microwaves, sparks, and then it sends out another frequency, another wave. So what's happening with your bed or with your bra, or if you have metal on your glasses, which are again very, very bad for your eyes, the metal absorbs the microwaves, the atomic particles vibrate. Each time they go up, they absorb the energy. Each time the electrons come down, they transmit energy. So what you have from your bed is transmissions coming straight up into your body at a slightly different wavelength. With your bra, you have transmissions coming out, but the cup of a bra is a parabola. And what you have is the transmissions are coming out into one small area of the breast of just a few hundred cells. And mammary cells are particularly sensitive to any form of radiation. They don't like to be irradiated. Again, with glasses, you absorb them and then they re-emit onto the cornea, onto the front of the eye. So, you know, you are really sleeping on top of an aerial, a transmitter.
When this energy passes through your body, there are certain parts I find that of my body that is always pulsing, like my tailbone is always pulsing, or the back of my neck, my head.
Your tailbone? You mean your coccyx? Coccyx?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Because you have resonance occurs in the body. You have cyclotronic resonance and circadian resonance going on in the body. With the cyclotronic resonance is think of a trampoline. If you jump on a trampoline and you bounce up and down and you get a nice steady bounce, that will be your natural resonant frequency for a bounce. If a 56-stone man jumps on and starts bouncing at his bounce, you have no choice but to bounce at his pace because he will take over. Now that's what happens in the body. The chlorine, calcium, sodium, potassium, the major neurotransmitters in the body, they have their own vibrational speed. Now, for instance, potassium vibrates at 16 vibrations a second. So anything that's vibrating near 16 a second will take over the potassium and change it. Again, with your brain waves, the delta, theta, alpha, beta, they have their own brain frequencies. It will take over the brain waves. So you have resonance there. Your organs have their own resonant frequencies, which can be taken over. You have circadian rhythms in your body. Your eyes fluctuate at a certain pulse frequency a second. All of your body pulses and fluctuates at its own speed. Every part of your body is vibrating. So what you have with these vibrations is when they come in, it's like the 56-stone man jumping on your trampoline, and your body has no choice but to vibrate at whatever's coming through it. And this is one of the problems we have, because there are some 50, 60 different types of vibrational frequencies coming through.
So are they overriding one's own natural pattern of your own body to when they microwave you?
Yeah.
So your body has no other option than to follow what's
No,
being
your
said
body
to you?
has to follow.
Right.
You have no choice. There's nothing you can do to stop it.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely nothing you can do to stop it.
What about taking a substance that will change neurotransmitters? Like in an article by Persinger, they talk about, he mentions two substances.
Which change neurotransmitters.
Or which can affect he mentions two substances that can provide some protection against.
Well, I mean, you can protect yourself like by taking melatonin but it's like taking an aspirin to stop migraine. The migraine's got to come back and stay there. No, you've got to get away from that pulse frequency, and this is one of the problems we have, is that It's what I call the silly boy syndrome. Our Prime Minister has got no idea about this, and the people in the factories that make these have got no idea. The industry have no idea. They're putting all these things out and about, but what they don't do is they don't come and talk to people like me and say, can we see this list? All of this could be safe. The whole communication system could be made safe. There are ways to stop the microwaves causing resonant frequency damage inside the body. There are ways of doing that. But it costs money, and they would have no profit. Right. So they won't do it. And the people making all these iPod and iPad gadgets and baby alarms, they have absolutely no idea about these frequencies and what they can do. They just make a device and put it out.
It's a scary thought.
Well, I mean, the problem is, you're right, we have now kings saying they are going to lose their countries. We have animals becoming sick, because it's not just us. All living cells are the same deep down. I mean, any blade of grass can read our DNA sequence. Any tree can read our DNA sequence. Because once you get to the cellular level, there really is no difference between the cells in that leaf out there and mine. The only difference is the outside of the cell has a cellulose outside to give it rigidity. But when you get down to the DNA, it's identical. The fact that our DNA makes us grow and talk and move this way, because we only use a very small fraction of our DNA. The plants will have probably very similar chromosomes, very similar DNA, but it uses different genes. It's really, all of the genes in the DNA from every living thing is made up of the same 4 bases. Everything. We are all the same. Now, if you're going to affect people, you're going to affect animals. And if you're going to affect animals, you're going to affect plants. Right. So what we are actually doing now is we are reducing the immune system and the navigation system of every single living creature on the planet. Every single one, without exception.
So more this comes into play, and the more this is going to get used, the more effect it's going to have on the whole world as one.
When yeah, you're absolutely right, Stephen. I've twice been invited to give the Glastonbury Festival lecture. There's an annual festival here called the Glastonbury Festival. It's a music festival and an intellectual festival down in the West Country, and people from all over the world come to Glastonbury. Twice I've given the anniversary lecture, and on both one of them's on the internet. On both occasions, I've actually said this, that we are now losing. We're losing our forests, we're going to lose our pollinating insects, we're going to lose our crops, we're going to lose all of our animals. And there are, to my knowledge, around 6,500 peer-reviewed and published papers on this that are being totally ignored by the industry and the governments. They've even appeared, 3 of them have appeared in what is probably the best magazine in the world, science magazine, which is Nature. 3 of them have appeared in Nature. And they're still being ignored.
For money. because this is a
For money.
for-profit.
Yep. Or, I mean, it may be that you want to destroy the animals and the crops, so you can then come in and offer aid. It may be intentional.
I think that's worth speculating about for sure.
Well, I mean, it's what the king told me, and he's not the only person that has said that to me. I've been in a country which is an island, and they have to import everything. And they said, you know, their drug bill has gone up roughly 40%. Any little livestock they did have is now non-existent. Their plants are almost non-existent. So now they are totally reliant on the countries importing. And this island is a very strategically placed place for a military base.
Oh, interesting. The military-industrial complex.
So I think it started out probably as a really good profit-making industry where the secret services could also have a hand in and gain information. Then they've suddenly realised, hang on, we can take over countries. Yeah, and
in your opinion, what is the grand scheme? I mean,
I don't think there is one. I think it's unfolding and people are deciding as they go along.
Really?
I find what they do is usually multi-purpose.
Yeah, it is multi-purpose. Whether they now have a grand plan, I wouldn't know. But it seems no sign of stopping. No sign of
Quite
stopping.
the opposite.
Yep.
Well,
what are because of these frequencies? Do our eyes become more sensitive to flicker rates? To certain, they do.
Yeah, it's the circadian rhythm of the eye. I think is it's very near the frequency of the ordinary cell tower. But there is a lady, and I shall think of her name shortly, Fellow of the Royal Society, very, very clever lady. In fact, she took me to dinner, I shouldn't forget her name. And she's written volumes on eyes and how it affects the eyes, because the eyes are moist, and anything moist will absorb microwaves. So eyes will absorb much more than... The only part of the body other than eyes is the DNA in ovarian eggs. They are very moist in the eggs. They absorb 10 times more than the rest of the body. And the only other part of the body I know that can absorb that much in the way of microwave radiation are the eyes.
Do certain gases or sprays, chemicals help frequencies, or have different effects on frequencies and on people?
You can get multiple chemical syndrome or sensitivity. In fact, the symptoms of multiple chemical sensitivity, the symptoms are the same as electrosensitivity. And the reason is that once the skin becomes sensitive, it can leak. Not leak as we would see it, but leak atomically. And when you start destroying the fabric of the skin, like the blood-brain barrier inside the body or the other barriers, then other chemicals can leak in, and you can then get multiple chemical sensitivity you can develop that from microwave radiation. So you can be chemically sensitive, you can become chemically sensitive and or electrosensitive at the same time.
Is that the odor, the bad odor we smell, or is that...
Well, any odour are really just chemicals that are flying around the air. So yes, anything at all. And I'll tell you who's written a very good paper on this is Dr. Andrew Goldworthy. Dr. Andrew Goldworthy, he was a lecturer at Imperial College, London, for 40 years. Now, Imperial College is the Oxford and Cambridge of London. You don't get to teach there if you're stupid. And he's written a very good paper on this.
So the odors could. A lot of people say they get bad odors in their nose or in their home. Is that just sensitivity to something that's already there?
Well, of course, you actually taste smells.
Yes.
You don't smell smells, you taste them.
Okay.
When the gases come in, they form part of a liquid, a fluid,
Mm-hmm.
and you taste them.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're tasting them, you have this chemical as a fluid in the body, which could then do whatever it wants to do.
Did you mean there be as well, if that can be any gases or medication that can make you more suggestible, or that makes the microwaves easier to pick up on you?
Silica dust is one thing I've heard they like to use. It makes us more easily seen in our homes. Is that true? It brings out a...
If the sprays have a metal component, for instance, some have aluminium droplets, some have small metallic ions, ION, to make them settle or react. If you have a metallic ion, that will automatically react with the microwaves. If they are iron based, because we have iron in our brains and bodies anyway, and this goes on anyway, but you can increase it. It's called the Fenton reaction. It's an enormously long chemical reaction. The stuff nightmares are made of when you look at it. But basically, if you have iron in the body, as we all do, but you're breathing it in as a form of compound from a spray, it reacts with microwaves with peroxide, which you also have in the body. You take in peroxide in some drinks and in some teas. Now, once you have peroxide, iron and microwaves, you automatically get what's known as the Fenton reaction. And the Fenton reaction, it depletes the iron. So what it does, it starts depleting the iron from the brain, which can bring on early Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and make you anemic. But at the other end of the reaction, the Fenton reaction, is a hydroxyl ion or a free radical, and that is cancer causing.
Are bleeding gums, hair loss, mole, you can get moles on your skin from
Soft tissue, yeah.
tissue.
Soft tissue. In any radiation sickness, soft tissue is always the first to go. The reason is that the soft tissue in our bodies, the gums, the bowel, the soft tissue replaces itself about every 6 weeks. So if you start damaging the soft tissue, then within 6 weeks you're going to have a bleeding bowel, a vaginal discharge, gum infection, skin infection, skin problems, that sort of thing. It's usually the first sign of radiation sickness. And the body reacts the same, whether it's microwaves or gamma rays or whatever. The symptoms, it's called radiation hormesis. The symptoms are the same, and in fact, to give you an idea of how ignorant governments are, it took 30 years for the lady doctor to stop pregnant women being x-rayed. She spotted straight away that the children were being born with leukemia, where they would x-ray pregnant women, and she told the government, the same government we're talking to, she told them that this was causing, and they said, "Go away, silly girl," words to that effect. And it took her 30 years to get x-rays stopped for pregnant women, because the industry opposed it.
That just really shows.
It took, and on a similar vein, it took a doctor from Scotland, a very clever man, 20 years. Once he found cholera in feces in water, it took him 20 years to get that stopped, because it would cost money. And smoking is a good example. In 1964, there were 32 university papers linking smoking to cancer. And it took another 30 years to get it. So, I mean, governments and industry, they will hold off for 20, 30 years in every case because it costs them money, and they avoid lawsuits.
Sure.
So with this, and we've already had people die from microwave sickness, it's going to take a long time, because the industry now is so powerful. It really is powerful. And it can tell governments what they will and will not do and say. And that is the problem.
Do you think a person's targeting could be something other than cell towers? Could it be land-based somehow, mobile?
Oh, it can be satellite-based.
Satellite,
Yeah.
satellite-based.
Yeah, it can be from anywhere at all. Yeah, it's not difficult. And you've got HAARP.
HAARP, I was going to just say HAARP.
You've got HAARP, HAARP. I believe there is a similar device in the Soviet Union. We've got one on Cyprus. There's probably one in China. And with HAARP, you can just beam microwaves anywhere in the world, anywhere. And you can target specific houses. You can target entire countries.
At the same time.
At the same time. Yep.
So that will be mass control, or it could be used that way anyway.
Yep. I mean, it's in Alaska. The American government say it's for studying weather, but you can just bounce microwaves off the ionosphere to anywhere in the world.
Right.
For instance, if I were a mad and evil scientist in this country, and I wanted to totally destroy the United States, and I told this in a legal hearing in London to 3 United States lawyers in the case I'm involved in Oregon. If I wanted to destroy the United States, let's say I was an Al-Qaeda, and I wanted to destroy the United States, all I have to do is build a 48 transmitter site transmitter complex like HAARP. I would aim it at the United States. I would think, how would I make the United States suffer? I would go for your wheat fields, because your wheat fields feed the entire planet, and your economy depends on your wheat exports and your beef, so I'd go for both of them. I would think, right, what frequencies will make the immune system suffer in wheat, cellular structures which are known, which would make the beef cattle sick, which are known. I would think, right, I can destroy that country. What I'll do now is I'll make myself $100 billion at the same time. I will grow wheat and I will grow beef, and then when I've ruined yours and there is a world shortage, I will up my price 20-fold for the rest of the world, and I'll make $20 billion. And I could ruin all of yours and sell mine, and it's that easy.
Probably no one else has that capability.
Well, I mean, the Russians, I think, have it. China probably has it. The Americans certainly have it. We have it. So
there's a few countries that have the capability.
Oh yeah,
to do
anybody.
things like
I mean,
this.
it's microwave transmitters are so easy to make, ever so easy. All you want is a power supply and 48 transmitters, and you're away.
But you need access to a satellite, obviously. Or is that
You don't need satellites.
No.
No, you can beam the microwaves in a direction, and they will bounce off the ionosphere that surrounds the planet.
So even if
They
you don't
bounce
have
off.
access to the ionosphere as a grid, but you just have the capability just because it's there.
Well, the ionosphere is space.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but I thought, do you not have to control the ionosphere?
No,
in some
no,
way
it's
to
just
do
a
this?
it's just an ionic layer around the planet.
I thought that HARP, one of its eventual goals is to control the ionosphere.
Well, they can make holes through it, or they could make it vibrate. But yeah, I
Just
mean,
using what's there already.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
but I mean, it's now. If I wanted to, I mean, and I had the capability, I could destroy the United States quite easily.
Mad.
And if I can do it, imagine what somebody from MIT, which is probably the top university in the world, MIT. Imagine what a team of clever scientists from there would do with a laboratory and 20 years research, which they've had. I mean, what I've said is just general knowledge. They will be way ahead of that. So we're getting to a phase now where we can literally destroy the planet. We're back to where I remember in the Cold War, where there were so many atomic bombs primed, loaded and ready to be fired. And I can remember when Kennedy was president, and the United States and Russia were within a heartbeat of total global nuclear war. And they had enough atomic bombs to literally rock the planet off of its axis and destroy everything. Yeah, and we were within, especially the Cuban Missile Crisis, we were within, I mean, the fingers were on the button. It only wanted pushing.
Inches away.
Oh, and it was the Russians at that time, they actually sent their warships to challenge the United States, and Kennedy was ready to push the button, and he was going to push it to launch global nuclear war, and the only thing that stopped it was the Russian president stopped his boats and turned them round. Had they gone on a few more miles, we would have been in total, nuclear war. And we were that close, and we're getting that close again now with microwaves.
You'd think that. I feel that, well, I've heard from a number of sources that the threats that were, published during the Cold War about threats from the Russians were somewhat exaggerated, or maybe largely.
Oh, they always are. They always are. Yeah, I mean,
even Al Qaeda is sort of a scapegoat, and some people think they don't even exist. It's a made up thing to get people to give up their civil liberties. The only reason I say it, I think there is a tie-in with these technologies.
oh, you're absolutely correct. And everybody, all the countries, exaggerate what they're doing to make the other country worried.
Big psyops.
Strategy.
The One Towers, you are familiar.
The Twin Towers, yeah, I remember that.
The Gwen Towers.
Sorry?
The Gwen Towers that were put up during the Cold War. to, if communication went down, the Gwen Towers they're run by the military.
Yeah.
Ground wave emergency network.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been said that the targeted individuals are kind of clustered around Gwen Towers throughout the United States, and the bottom 3/4 of the Gwen Towers are now being leased out to the public, but the top quarter is still being used by the military.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt it. I mean, officially, every single microwave transmitter in this country, just ordinary cell towers, every single one comes under the Official Secrets Act. And they've done that to stop people complaining to their members of parliament that they don't want it there. See, once you put something under the Official Secrets Act, you can't challenge it.
Not until 20 to 30 years afterwards.
No.
Right. Well, I have a question for you.
Come on, yeah, that's just
if you're targeted
Yep.
by microwaves,
Yep.
Does the weather have a difference? Does it make a difference if there's a clear weather or raining or windy?
Not really.
Not really.
No. I mean, you will get some reflection if it's got to come through rain, hailstones possibly, snow, but generally no.
Generally no.
It won't make any difference.
Okay, unnoticeable.
No.
Right.
No.
Okay.
No.
Can voices in the head somehow be recorded, or that signal, I think Stephen had a better way to put it in words, the signal be interrupted to be read before it reaches a person?
Yeah, well, we were wondering if you can record the signal that's being sent to you. Can it be picked up by an analyzed spectrum, and then afterwards decoded to see what's being sent to you?
Yeah.
That's possible.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
A spectrum analyzer. I just need to let the dog into the garden. Hang on. You're okay, lass?
I'll do that. No, I'll let him into the garden.
Yeah. Go on, let's go in the garden. Want to go in the garden? Right. Come on, then. He wants me to. No, go on then. Yeah, just leave the door. Yes. Can the signal be picked up? Yes.
How does that work? How does the spectrum analyzer work? That it could be read, like Stephen has said.
Yeah, we know we can pick it up. The signal is not the hard part. It's more the hard part is decoding the signal to see what's being sent. And we wondered how is it possible and how can you do
You would need to know what frequencies they're using, and you would need to know how to decode it, but you could.
it's
I mean, theoretically you can, yeah, of course you can. If you can send anything, it can be decoded.
Sure, and recorded.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because if I wanted you to hear a voice of an angel, I would send first of all the microwave, which would be the carrier wave. Then I would put the modulations on. Now, if you think of an airport, and think of the conveyor belt that carries the suitcases. It's a big rubber conveyor belt going up to the hold in an aeroplane, or they used to have them. So you've got this conveyor belt like an escalator, or what do you call them in America? Not an escalator. The moving staircase.
Escalator.
Yeah. So imagine that. Okay, that's the ordinary microwave coming towards you. All of the suitcases that are dumped on to reach the aeroplane.
All right.
They would be the modulations.
Okay.
So each modulation, as it comes, it would trigger something in your brain to make speech, just like an ordinary sound wave.
Right.
So all of the sounds, the colours, everything, they would be modulations. Now, if you're sending sounds and colours and speech and what have you by modulations, they can be decoded.
Of course. Theoretically.
Well, they can. I mean, what they would have these days, they would have a spectrum analyzer that went through, the big one in America now, in terms of power, The one in America, that supercomputer, and I'm trying to think what its name is, it could listen to everybody in the world making a phone call all at once, individually, and log them. So if you've got a computer like that can scan all the trillions of frequencies and think, well, that doesn't work, but that makes sense. It's like decoding, and that makes sense. I mean, a computer of that power would probably decode it in a trillionth of a second.
Okay, thank you.
Does it make a difference if you're sleeping behind it, or if you're behind, not sleeping, if you're behind a brick wall, a galvanized steel wall, a window, how these frequencies reach a person?
Microwaves can't go through metal. It's the only thing that will block them. Gamma rays and X-rays will go through metal. Microwaves can't. So they will go into the metal, they will make it vibrate, but microwaves cannot go through metal. So the best way to stop microwaves is metal. With clothing, they now weave in copper thread or silk thread. That stops microwaves. Microwaves are very easily stopped, but they will go through brick, concrete, they'll go through anything quite easily. What they cannot do is go through metal.
Does it have to be grounded? Does it have to be welded together? Does it have to be a perfect box?
If you're putting up some form of metal defence, like around a house, please eat these biscuits, won't you? If you're putting up some sort of metal defence around your house, don't use cooking foil, because cooking foil has holes in and microwaves can get through. Thin aluminium foil or tin, that'll stop it. And the easiest thing to do is, if you do a wall, I mean, people use radiator foil, is the best thing. In cold countries like your country, you can get radiator foil. It's shiny foil you put behind fires, and it reflects the heat back into the... it's like very, very thin tin. So if you do a whole wall and you've got a lot of microwaves that will build up charge, all you need to do is just connect an ordinary little piece of wire like this to the bottom corner, just run it under the carpet, out into the garden, connect it to a knitting needle that's metal, a metal knitting needle, and stick it in the ground. That's it.
Right. To conduct.
Well, as you get a positive charge build up, the electrons from the ground will come in and neutralise it. Otherwise, you'll get an electric shock.
Really? So can they, if you have, say, you put up in the defence like you explained here, can they send, like you say, can they change this their wave to a gamma or an X-ray and start to attack you with different waves? No. You need a nuclear cyclotron to generate X-rays and gamma rays, and they would never ever be able to do that, because if you think of the speed of these waves, they can go round the world 7 times in a second. So if you start blasting a house with X-rays, you're going to blast everybody in a straight line until it gets to the curvature of the Earth. Right. And you're going to kill everybody in that straight line. Okay. So no, you'd never use gamma rays or X-rays. The only thing they can use is microwaves. And if you know how to defend yourself, they will give up. Because it costs a lot of money to target somebody. A lot of money, because they've got to be monitored, and these scientists are on a very high salary, $50,000 a year plus, and there's no point in targeting somebody if the money's going to be wasted. So if you put up a fight, they will leave you alone and go to somebody else.
What if you think you've been left. I found that they have stopped doing some of these more blatant things, and they're doing more subtle things, which, of course, in the long run is worse. To have something subtly done, subtly being affected behaviorally or physiologically.
Oh yeah, they will. They will do.
Sure if they're being.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing a scientist likes better than a good challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm targeting you and I know that you know I'm doing it, and you decide to counteract this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to. And this is like a crossword puzzle to me. This is now it's a game.
Get down and dirty.
It's a game, and I'm going to think, okay, let's see how clever you really are, and I'm going to do this. And if you, I'll say, well, okay, let's see if you can get out of this one. And it's a game. And these people, they are above the law. They have no morals.
They're arrogant.
Arrogant, and they cannot be taken to court.
Well, I think that's where they get their, what can I say, their solitude from. They don't fear nothing because they know nothing can happen to them, or they can't be.
Yep.
They don't have to answer for anything they do. So
No.
that's why they're doing extensively all over and over again.
Oh, you're right, Stephen. You're absolutely right. And scientists are kicking back, and they are writing papers, but they know that if they expose the industry, and a very, I can give you two examples if you like. Tell me if I'm blabbing on too much about. I'll give you an American and a British one. In this country, a scientist asked to see me, and he said, "I've had a really bad problem, Barrie," and he was still is a top government scientist, and he said, "I've just done an experiment, and this is to do with Tetra."
Right.
He said, "I've just done an experiment for the government." He said, "I was asked to test the heart and the brain against the Tetra wave frequencies and assess them for damage." And he said to me, "How long would it take you to do that experiment?" And I said, "Well, I would follow the same path the drug companies tend to follow. 10 years. I said I would do cell cultures, and I wouldn't experiment on animals. I don't believe in that sort of thing. I would use cell tissue and body tissue, and over 10 years, I said I would have a fairly good write-up ready." He said, "Do you know how long they gave me?" He said, "Within the hour, I completed both and had time for a cup of coffee. 10 minutes for one, 20 minutes for the other." He said, "Now clearly it came out negative and safe. And all the people were told was that the country's top scientist had tested it and found it safe.
Right.
They didn't say it was in 10 minutes. And he said, "Now I know this is going to cause cancer. What can I do?" He said, "I've got a kid at university, I've got 2 kids at college, I've got a huge mortgage. If I breathe a word of this, I'm going to lose my job, and I'm never going to get another one." He said, I've painted myself into a corner." He said, "I've done nothing wrong. They gave me the directions, I did the experiment, I've given them the result." He said, I know morally what they're going to do," he said, "but I've got my family to think of, and I don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, I can't advise you. You must do what you think. I know what I would do, but I don't know what you would do." And he kept quiet, and he let it go through.
So that's what's happening. That's
And he thought of his girl at university and his kids at college, and thought, this is where my priorities lay. That's one example. Another, I think, and I've met this gentleman, I stayed in London with him, is George Carlo. Your American Professor George Carlo. He did a probably a 10-year experiment for the industry. He did a 10-year experiment for the industry. He found that microwaves caused cancer. They said, we're not going to publish. And he said, well, you must, because people need to know this.
Sure.
And they said, no, we've decided not to publish. And he went ahead and published anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Lost his job, lost his research job, had his house burnt down.
But he had a book that came out.
George Carlo, he's
did
very
sell,
famous.
called Cell Phone or something.
Yeah.
I might be thinking of
Yeah.
something. Do you know how it's spelled, Carlo?
No, Carlo, C-A-R-L-O, George Carlo.
Oh.
George Carlo. He now runs a consulting, electromagnetic consulting organisation in the United States. He's based in California, I think. And he now spends his life taking on the industry.
So if young people are going to go into science, they should maybe avoid having children, because the children, your children, you want to provide for them financially, and then they're more likely to keep quiet.
Yeah, but I mean, it just gives an example of what the industry is capable of doing. Another one in America, a very famous man, Henry Lai, L-A-I, professor. University of Washington, ran the whole university research department. He was advised not to talk, he did, and overnight he lost his University of Washington research department. Overnight.
Well, I suppose this is why people fear so much as well, to stand forward and tell people what's happening.
Yeah, if you say anything, you're out of a job.
Yeah.
Anything.
And labelled crazy.
And labelled crazy, yep.
I still don't understand, or maybe want to get your opinion of why are we being singled out? Is it because we're fighting back? Is it a game now to these people? Because it's become almost torture.
Both. If you go against the industry, they will target you.
Well, I know people who are TIs and they've never done really anything. They're very quiet.
Yeah, that's the first half.
Okay.
If you go against the industry, the chances are they will target you anyway. But if you're going to run an experiment, like the 500,000 people, if you're going to run an experiment on human beings, you can't have them know. They've got to be totally unaware that you want to use them. So what they would do is they'll say, well, we'll have so many 100,000 young fit men or women, which are the army or the police. Then we'll have some psychiatric patients and some ordinary housewives and some teenagers, and we want some that are taking drugs to see what the effect is with drugs, and we'll have some that do this and some that work and some that don't, and we'll have a few alcoholics, and it's their base.
I suppose it's to get a broad spectrum, as many people as possible from all different places in society.
Oh yeah. You've got to.
And so those that become aware are more heavily targeted. Those that start speaking out.
If you start upsetting them, they will certainly target you somehow. It may be tapping your phone. It may be telling your boss that if you don't stop, you'll lose your job. It may be visiting your children on the way home from school and say, you tell mummy that nice man from the communications industry says hello, which I've known happen. It may be they will follow you, they will let you know just to stop you going after them.
Yeah, I feel that maybe there was someone working covertly who let some of us know, because I really don't think I'm that smart, and I just started sensing things, figuring out things, and I don't know if that person put some sort of algorithms tweaked in to HARP or whatever they're shooting out to let us know and do us a favor on the one hand, because otherwise my life would spiral out of more and more, I would have more and more personal problems with this stuff affecting me.
Yeah.
So.
But they will also target your computers. You will have computer problems. They have the ability to download everything in your computer, which is one of the reasons I don't have one. If you have a computer, they can download every single thing, even the things encrypted, like your bank statements and your personal. They can download the whole lot, read it. They can change it if they wish, and they can put it back, and they can put it back with anything they want. And it's not unknown for people to switch on a computer and find child pornography in the memory. And then there's a knock at the door, and you give up then fighting the industry, because now you've got to try and work out how it got there, convince all your neighbours you're not a paedophile, tell the police, and you could end up in jail.
Right. So do they need to get on your computer, as you said? They don't need to connect. They don't need to do that manually, obviously.
No.
Do they need to turn on your Wi-Fi, or can they do that from a remote?
They can do it from a remote.
They can turn your Wi-Fi on from a remote.
But they can get you anywhere they like with a computer.
Okay.
I mean, even if you've accidentally answered an email or one of these things and it's a sex site, and even if you've cancelled it, it's still there. It's in the memory, it's in the hard drive. And all they've got to do is knock at your door and say, "Excuse me, Mr. Stephen, you've got pornography on your computer." And you say, "Yes, but I deleted it." And they say, "But it's your computer, and you've got," it's like having stolen goods in your house.
Well, you're being implemented.
And it's on the newspapers, dunk, 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 and your reputation's finished.
Oh, that's classic character assassination.
Yep.
These steps that I've gradually found out, this is what they do straight away. They label you as crazy, label you as a murderer or terrorist or paedophile,
absolutely.
as you said, and sometimes label all things together.
Yep.
So one thing doesn't work out for them, they've got so many other things to fall back on that your character and your friends and your family is going to be lost until you can actually prove these things are going on. And people that may think something's wrong here, we've known him for years, he's not like that. But they are either intimidated or being bought off. And this is what I found personally.
Absolutely. I mean, we've had, when I was invited to speak to the Welsh Parliament. I've addressed several parliaments. When I was invited to address the Welsh Parliament, and it's on the internet, addressed to Welsh Assembly, I think the first thing I did was pay tribute to 5 or 6 very skilled research scientists who all very suddenly committed suicide.
Right.
Supposedly commit suicide.
Yep. One of them the day before his honeymoon.
Oh, please. These were what type of scientists?
Well, doing the work that I'm doing.
Yeah. In the last...
In the last few years.
Oh, they certainly give you the idea to commit suicide as
yeah.
well.
As I say, George Carlo had his house burnt down. Henry Lai lost his job. I'm trying to think of the chap in Sweden. What's his name? Johansson. Ollie Johansson, Professor Johansson, Ollie Johansson of the Karolinska Institute, Stockholm, in Sweden. He sent a message out just last week to say his computer is being interfered with, and he's being targeted, and no mail is safe.
That's the story of most of us.
Yeah.
It goes in stages.
Yeah.
And then we become electronically harassed.
Yeah. Right. Can you hear that? I must just go out and feed the birds. They've eaten all their breakfast. They're a good boy. I know.
So are you contacted by many people regarding
Sorry.
our issue?
Oh, we're back on. Are we on? We're recording, are we?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay.
Would you like me to start over?
Yeah. Just.
I
Sorry.
apologize.
That's okay. Are you all right there? What's the problem?
I thought I dropped a little, one of those stick-like chocolate.
Oh, don't worry about that.
But I don't think I
No, he'll get it. Don't worry about that. Oh, it's a finger. Yeah, a chocolate finger. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
No, he'll find that. He'll be all right.
Okay.
And then we'll start. Are we ready?
Are we ready?
It's rolling. So
Okay.
Do you hear from other people like us who are being targeted?
I have around 900 communiques a week. Usually by telephone, because I don't have a computer. The phone goes sometimes almost continuously. Oddly enough, I even get calls Christmas Day and Easter Sunday. I get calls from people who, when they're desperate, they're desperate. I don't think I've had a single day when somebody hasn't contacted me, I don't know, for 12 years. Not a single day. But 900, there are a few ladies around the country, and people know these ladies are in touch with me, and they email the ladies.
Oh.
They send the ladies emails, and the ladies can collect up the emails, and they put them in envelopes and send them to me. So 2 or 3 times a week I'll get a big brown envelope through the door, and it'll be a whole batch of emails, but it works, you know. It's and some people, like in Africa, a township, they clubbed together, because you have to pay for emails, they clubbed together to send an email to a lady who posted it to me for help. You know, and then I can sort of send the message back, or I can, you know, I do whatever I do. So I have what I call an overseas box. I don't accept gifts or money or anything, but when I visit a country, if there is anything left over from the travelling expenses, what I do, I say, you have £20 left over that I didn't spend at the airport. Right. Can I put it in my overseas box? You know, and they say yes. You know, and that goes to Africa and India and photocopy and stuff like that.
So are there people, many targeted people in Africa as well?
Quite a lot, yeah. There's quite a lot of people being targeted, and just a lot of people who are just electrosensitive or being made sick. Just, you don't have to be targeted. Just, you know, we know that probably a minimum of 1/5 of any country's population are going to be ill without being targeted.
In the future, or
well,
or
it's usually as soon as you switch the transmitter on, it's instant. It may take 18 months for all the symptoms to show. It may take 2.5 years, but we know that 1/5 of a country's population are going to be ill within the first 5 years.
really?
And we've got 14 very long epidemiological studies to prove that, and 2 of them by the industry themselves, when they actually said these microwaves can cause cancer.
And still no government listens.
Well, no government wants to turn them off.
No.
They're too useful. There's too much money, too much information. So the government are painting themselves into a corner. I mean, whether they think that when they finish being government officials, they can get on a bus that will take them to another solar system, they haven't thought that far ahead. You know, it's, I can get a knighthood and I can do this and I can do that. And
so the same people who know it's harming the public are the people who are allowing it to happen, and
Yep.
they're being, their health is being affected also.
Mm.
So it just doesn't make any
it's
sense.
yeah, it is totally ludicrous.
Do you feel yourself you're being targeted in any way? Or?
I've had 3 death threats. 2 of them in the forest where I walk the dog, 1 of them at a conference. But to me, it's like the schoolboy bully.
Right.
And what we've got now is schoolboy bullies that with the permission of the principal, saying you can bully anyone as much as you like, and if you get any trouble, send them to me and I'll deal with them.
Right.
And I've never liked schoolboy bullies, and you've got to stand up to them, and if I'm the only one in the world, I shall stand up to them. But I won't be bullied. And in fact, as I said, I'm trying to think who I said it to now, but one of them threatened me and said, you know, you're not going to live very long with this. And I said, when you get back, say to your boss that I'm in the forest every day between 9:15 and 10 o'clock with the dog. I'm the old man with a stick, wearing a red coat and a black hat and a black Labrador, and that's where you'll find me.
Wow, thank you. And the public needs to know that the fact that you are getting these threats, gee, that means this is true. You are not misinformed. You are not deluded.
Oh, no, you know you're right. If I were wrong, they would take me to court. I have begged them to take me to court. Because I can't afford to take them to court, but if they take me to court, I can take 3 years.
Do you feel you're being harassed with frequencies or and those sorts of things?
I've got this house insulated.
You do, good.
Funny you say you have your house insulated, but I'm still getting affected under this beating.
I am too.
Are you? Yeah.
But that's probably because we have transceivers
Yeah.
in our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is it a lot hard, like you said before, you described how to defend yourself against the microwaves. Is it harder to defend yourself if you have microchips in you?
No, it's quite easy. You just get it taken out. Now,
Well, yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
find anyone to take
Um,
them out.
come here. If you think he's got a chip inside him, in case he gets lost, or now, if he got lost, and he'd be taken to a vet.
Yeah.
The vet has a reader, a little transducer reader, or big transducer, that they put over the body, and it picks up the transmissions.
Sure.
Okay. Now, all you need to do, and it's in that paper. It's in the paper I've sent Debbie. If you go to a vet, or you get any form of microwave receiver,
Yeah.
and run it over your body, if you're transmitting, it'll pick it up.
Right.
So if you get a reader like the vets have, they're very good, those things. If you've got a friendly vet, just say, look, don't run it over the cat, run it over me and see what you can get. Get the reader run over your body. If there's a transmitter in there and it's the right frequency, the reader will certainly pick it up
Right.
quite loudly, like a metal detector.
Yeah.
You can use a metal detector, you can use a microwave detector, you can use a reader. Run it over the body. When it beeps, you'll know where it is.
Yeah.
When you know where it is, what you've got to do is get that particular part of your body x-rayed.
Sure.
Pinpoint it. It might only be the size of a pinhead. Get that part of your body x-rayed. Then what you've got to do is find somebody, a doctor, that will take it out.
Right.
Under, local anaesthetic.
Sure.
Take it out. And once you've got it out, then you've got a case you can win. But until you've actually got it in your hand,
You won't have a chance.
you haven't got a chance.
Right.
They'll say you're mad. But if you take it out and you put it under a microscope, any school microscope, and have a look at it, then you've got a case.
Right, okay.
Because there's only probably one time in your life when someone's had that access to your body.
Yeah, you can narrow it down.
You can your medical records will narrow it down, and it's quite easy to pinpoint the person.
Okay.
Well, like an anesthesiologist.
Well, I mean, if let's say one is found in your shoulder, there can only be probably one time in your life when that particular part of your shoulder was operated on or treated.
But someone could have covertly come in when the doctor left the room, and someone who was ostensibly an anesthesiologist or a nurse or something, and then they just put a little tiny rice-sized something.
You may not get the individual,
shot.
but you'll get the actual time and place.
Yeah.
But it can be done. They can be read, they can be found, they can be located, and they can be taken out. I mean, just a minor surgery, what we call minor ops here, minor surgery, any local doctor will numb the skin and just take it out. And once you've got it, then you have your legal case.
Right. One more question to follow up.
There's no problem with questions. Go.
Okay. If you now I know I'm chipped myself because I have checked myself and I've come up positive, and I have a chip here, in my forehead, on each side of my head, and each side of my jaw, and the lower back here. So what does the different places where the chips are placed, what effect does it have, and what different kinds of chips are there?
Well, you've got 639 muscles, so they can affect any of those muscle groups.
Right.
You've got all of the nerves running around those muscles, so they could affect the nerves. They could be near the endocrine glands, that would affect the secretions.
Right.
That could make you hyperactive, or go the other way, it could make you suicidal. You can actually affect somebody any way you like, really.
Really. So if this is your frontal lobe and you have on each side, that's your whole brain pattern, really.
Oh yeah.
So that means they're going to have control over your thought, over your vision, over your sleep.
Yeah. Have you seen the list I've got of all the different frequencies and what they can do?
No.
Do you want a copy?
Yeah, for sure.
I'll give you a copy.
Yeah.
If I show you the list, it's. I'll get it in a minute. Before you leave, I'll give you a copy of the list of all the different frequencies that are known and practiced and work.
Okay.
And you can see, in fact, some people, when they look at the list, they can think, well, they make me do this, and you can actually see the frequencies that you're being targeted with.
Yeah, I'll be much grateful for that.
I'll give you, it's only on a single sheet, I'll give you a copy.
Okay.
It's the only copy in the world, not piece of paper, it's the only list in the world.
Yeah, no, I got you.
I compiled it from years and years of government research. And then when I realised how secret it was, the first thing I did was put it on the internet.
Right.
So it's on the internet, but I'll give you a copy.
Many victims are finding their emitting radio signal from their jawline.
Yep.
Is there a reason why it's always, is it because it's close to the ear?
No, it's because of the teeth.
The teeth.
If you have the old fillings in your teeth, the mercury, or the amalgam fillings, the metal-based fillings, they make transmitters. So what you need, if you only need a tiny, tiny transmitter around the salivary glands, they transmit to the teeth. The teeth then can act as big transmitters.
Right.
Especially if you've got metal in your mouth, you see, they're laughing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and then they can transmit to the brain through the teeth.
Oh my God.
Just through the nerves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, metal.
I have a question. We seem to have discussed how a problem is that if people try to talk about this, they can get death threats.
Absolutely,
Or other,
Yep.
or they can lose their job. Well, it seems that now it has gotten so widespread, military, but now it's in the cell phone industry and satellites, maybe HARP, so widespread, universities, that why can't they stop the unrelenting defensiveness? If people are to talk about it or try to convince other people or to have lawsuits, any one of those institutions, government or industry, could say, well, no comment, or we didn't do it. You know what I mean? Why is there just still this continual heavy intimidation?
How long can they deny it?
Well,
Yeah.
I've got a legal case coming up in the United States, partly to do with this, but you can't go straight in with what they're doing. You've got to come in by the back door. Now, we've got this, it's a highly publicised case. I'm one of the scientific witnesses, and only a couple of months ago I was in London with 3 of your lawyers. This is the case going on in Oregon with the little girl who doesn't want to be microwaved. And she's taking on the industry. And the industry have said, well, take us to court. And Daddy is a lawyer and his best friend is a lawyer and they have law firms. And she said, fine, this is my interpretation, I'll take you to court. And she has. And a few months ago in London, the industry's lawyer came over to interview me and another scientist. I think he's interviewed me for 5 hours as a preliminary. And the little girl was there, and her 2 lawyers were there. It's what you call the deposition. He came over and asked questions, and they've all gone back. We're just waiting now for the court date. But once I can get in court, I can blurt all this out in court.
Yeah.
But until you can, there's not much you can do. And I don't know, if it doesn't get to court, then the world isn't going to know again.
No, I think that's what we really need, or the people need, in altogether. It's a few cases to break the ice, so the people and the court system knows that these things are going on, and there are possibilities to trial these people in court.
Yeah. I mean, at the moment, people are too busy. They're too busy keeping their families together, holding on to a job, paying their bills. The stress of life anywhere is so great at the moment that people can't stop their lives and put everything in jeopardy to take on the most powerful industry on the planet. They can't do it. Even if they could, they probably wouldn't want to. It's down to people like you and me, and a few others,
Just trying to get
to try and get the word out. But We're getting there, but it's going to be slow. As I say, it took 30 years to stop X-raying pregnant women and 20 years to get cholera recognised and 30 years to try and get smoking after it was known to cause cancer. So nothing happens quickly.
No.
Do you have any questions you'd want to ask us as victims of this?
No.
Okay.
I know exactly what you're thinking. I know exactly what you would answer. I have spoken to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people.
I have, well, it's sort of a question to you and a comment.
Yeah, that's
that,
okay.
There was a document, and it was called something like Selected Bioeffects of Some Non-Lethal Weapons, and it was supposedly became unclassified. And in this document, they talk about how some of these technologies or weapons affect elasticity of the skin of cells, and some cause epileptic-like waves in the brain in an effort to entrain the brain. Now, I was really somewhat happy when in 2007 I had an EEG. I have never in my life had a seizure, but the EEG showed epileptic-like wave spikes.
Mm-hmm.
And now here's a funny thing: unless the people doing this to me have done this to quote unquote play me, someone's told me about something called Lyrica. That's the brand name, and it's for fibromyalgia, which I was experiencing along with chronic fatigue. But anyway, and when I said, okay, I'll try the medication. And when there's a whole printout about what the medication can do and then what some of the side effects are, I was really surprised to see this. It said Lyrica for fibromyalgia, blah, blah, blah. And one thing it said was it may help block or prevent some types of seizures in the brain. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, because I don't know anything about the whole field of seizures in the brain. But when I saw that, it was strange, and I do not know if I still take Lyrica. I do not know if it helps me, because I have friends who seem to have worse things happening to them, although I do have my share. They can make me tired all day when it's time, as you know, you've probably heard it all. When it's time to go to sleep, with a flick of a switch, I feel 100% better. So what would you think about that possibility? That's what I kind of asked you before about possibly substances which can protect on a cellular level.
Right. Your brain has, in terms of fits and epilepsy, your brain has a feedback loop. Granule tissue, basket cells, and mossy fibres.
Mm-hmm.
Mossy fibres, granule cells, basket cells, the three of them. Now, those three components make up a feedback loop. Now, by feedback loop, if too much electricity goes into your brain, what this circuit does, rather than have the electricity come out into the brain and start upsetting all the cells, it can feed it around a loop until it's safe to release it in small batches. It's a bit like a fuse, if you like. So it's called a feedback loop. So if you get a surge of electricity, it winds it around this circuit in the brain rather than have it come straight out in the brain. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Right, now what can happen is with microwave irradiation, which generates electric currents in the body, as the microwaves go in, the magnetic field actually generates electric currents in the body. So what you can do is you overload this feedback loop, and once it's overloaded, there is nothing else it can do but get all the electricity out. Hence, a lot of people near transmitters or using phones that have epileptic fits, because it overloads the feedback loop. And the only thing you can do is they do have some sort of drug that can stimulate the feedback loop to neutralize the current, or I don't know how they work, but I know you can sort of do something to the feedback loop that stops it blurting all the electricity out.
So it's possible that what I'm taking, I think the generic name is pregabalin or something like
Yeah,
that.
it would have to be some sort of ionic compound that
Oh,
neutralized or generated something that neutralized the charge in the body, the ionic charge. It would have to be something that produced something that neutralized the ionic charge. It would have to do something like that.
okay.
Because it's... yeah, I'm thinking of oxygen ions or hydrogen ions or something. You would have to generate some sort of ionic compound that would neutralize that particular charge.
Okay. Are there any analog correlates to some pulse frequencies like tap dancing or clapping or just people, or maybe people laughing and being happy together that might help? As simple as that sounds, as maybe hopeful as that sounds, when people are together, maybe there's a little field that can be created, a field of happiness if they're happy, or something that, like say, I know there are.
Well, yeah, laughter is addictive. If one person laughs, the other, like yawning. If one person yawns, everybody else yawns.
And there's like 2 hertz, 2 cycles per second, or all the way from 1 to 10 or 15. That the brain. So I was thinking, if I clap a certain way, I'll interfere with what they're doing, or tap my foot a certain way.
It's possible. I mean, there are. Your question is probably too advanced. There are something like 100,000 different structures, protein structures that have different jobs in the body, and out of those 100,000, I think only about 600 are known. So there is more unknown in the body than known, and you could be right. And if it works, then you need to write a research paper on it. If you can find something that works, you write a research paper and get it published in one of our magazines, and then somebody like me will read it around the world, and they will say, well, I can add to that, because I know the chemical. The problem we have today, and this isn't an opt-out of trying not to answer your question, the problem we have today is that scientific knowledge now is so specialized. There was a time when I was teaching science, I could teach chemistry and physics and biology and botany, and now scientists coming out of university will probably only be specialized in one structure of a leaf. They probably couldn't answer questions about the rest of the leaf or the tree or the bark or the insects. It is now so highly specialized, like in photosynthesis and whatever. So, and there is so much knowledge now. There are something like 50 million scientific research papers now published in everything.
And not enough holistic or interdisciplinary.
And you now, if you're an expert, you can only be an expert in the tiny, tiny, tiny little fraction of those 50 million papers. And this is the problem. And I remember talking to a scientist who designed aeroplanes once, and he said there was a time I could design the whole aeroplane. He said now with people with my qualifications may only get to design a nut and a bolt that holds a part of the engine together, because it doesn't decay and it doesn't, metallurgically do this or that or the other. He says we might only now do a nut and a bolt. And he said we certainly couldn't do a wing. No scientist could possibly do a wing for an aeroplane.
No way. Really?
Why do you think the system and the school system have evolved this way? That people could only do fractions of what they used to be able to do.
Well, it's just knowledge. Knowledge grows. You know, I mean, when you go to university and you do a degree, you spend the first 3 years learning what everybody else has learned up to that point in time, as some of you may know. Then you spend the last year doing new research that hasn't been done before. So every single university student is doing a dissertation in something that hasn't been done before.
At a master's level.
And then that's published. That's where your degree comes from. The first bit is just really learning.